The absolute value is what we're going to be learning at today. And this has actually been hiding in plain sight from you for a long time. It's one of the first things that students always ask me about when they first get their calculators, because it's a funny little word over here, abs. It doesn't give you abs, unfortunately. But when you press it, you get these two little bars. Now, I just want you to try and put some numbers in here. If I put in, for example, like 5, it doesn't really seem to do anything. But try putting some other kind of numbers in there and see what happens to it. Maybe I'll put in like, I don't know, 100. Okay, that doesn't really do anything. Maybe I need to try something else. Maybe I need to try like fractions or something. Let's try 2/3, maybe. Does that do anything? Okay, that still gives me 2/3. So nothing particularly interesting happening right now. So someone give me another number to put in. -3. Ah, what do I get? What do I get? I get a positive. What if I put in, someone else have something I can put in? -2. And it doesn't matter what number you put into here, right? -5. What would -pi become? Okay, so what does it seem like is happening when I put this in? I get the positive version of whatever I put in here. And very simply, we could think about the absolute value almost like an operation that does that. Anything you put in, this is not a blue pen, anything inside these two kind of bars, right, becomes positive. We can think of it like that. And it works very well for numerical kind of examples. Okay, this definition is kind of sufficient for that. But unfortunately, when we look at kind of variables and more tricky or complex examples, that definition doesn't work as clearly. So I'm going to give you another definition. I'm a very visual person, so I like thinking about things visually. Have a think about when do we need things to be positive? What are some situations where things, because we have negative numbers to describe certain things, but there are certain situations where negative numbers doesn't make sense to describe certain situations. Yeah, so velocity is speed with direction. Is that how it's described? Yeah? Yeah, so displacement can be negative. And what is displacement? Displacement is, for example, if I'm here, right? Let's say 0. Yeah, what was it, Harry? I think displacement can be negative. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so then it can't really be a distance, because a distance, I can't have, when I measure something out, I can't have -5 meters, for example, right? Distance always has to be positive, right? Distance always has to be positive. But if I'm thinking about this from a visual sense, how do I make sense of what this actually is? Well, what I can say is, let's take our 5 and -5, right? When I put these into my absolute value, I always got a positive number. So maybe how we can think about the absolute value is it's telling me the distance from 0, right? Because these are both 5 away from 0, okay? And if I put that in there, maybe I'm being told the distance away from 0. Maybe that's what the absolute value is, okay? So there's two things of understanding. Anything inside here becomes positive, or maybe it's the distance from 0. Does that make sense? Right? Yeah. So absolute value. Sometimes we need things in a positive case. Another example is that when you've been working with quadratic equations, remember sometimes we get a positive and a negative case, right? But when you're solving questions which are related to how long is something, all right, or how much time does it take for something to happen, it doesn't make sense to have a negative time or a negative distance. We have to only take the positive case. So that's a situation we might want to use the absolute value as well. Okay. Let's have a look at some questions for what we can do with this. Okay, let's look at the first couple. These ones we can just evaluate in our calculator, right? Or we can just do it in our heads, okay? If I was to get the absolute value of 30, nothing's going to change because they're both positive, so we just leave it like that. But if I have -30, I know using this kind of definition, anything that is in here, it becomes positive, so that will give me 30 as well. What's happening with here? Well, what happens when you put an operation in there? What did you guys get? You just got 6, right? Because what we can do is we can treat these almost like brackets. I can say, okay, 2 minus 8, that becomes -6. and then, or anything inside here becomes positive. And it still makes sense with this definition, right? If you just change these to become 6 and -6, right, you can see very clearly the distance from 0, right, it's just going to be 6 units. Maybe you want to think about it like that. These operations we can still do. What do we get for this one over here? 25, because this would just be 22 plus 3. That gives me 25. And it doesn't matter what other operations. We can do multiplication. We can do whatever we want. This guy here, I'm doing 5 times 3, essentially, plus, now what happened with the -8? Did anything special happen? It just becomes 8, right? So that'd be 8 all squared. And what did you guys get for that? Can't do that in my head. What was that one? 79. Okay, cool. So that's how we can evaluate questions with the absolute value. We're looking for numerical answers here.